dashboards, the Azure customer portals. So it's, really important data. It's really a big data problem where, you have to think about how do I process 10 billion rows of data per month and, 30 million rows of data per hour. It's really, you learn a lot about scalability, about, planning for the future and stuff like that. So that's just some short info about myself. But if you have any questions regarding what I do later on, you could pose them as questions to me.
Yeah. So the other thing is, I think most of them are familiar with the idea of a software engineer, but then program manager is a role that we don't really know much about in Bangladesh, like product management and program management, and how that differs from a traditional software engineering role. So if you could kind of tell them a little bit more about that, especially how program manager within Microsoft is a unique role, then that would be super helpful.
Okay. So I can start off by basically talking about the role of a product manager in a wider sense, which is not really within Microsoft, because the role of a product manager or a program manager, it's very different across a big company versus a small company versus a startup. And even within the same company, a product manager can be working with very different things, and the things that they do can vary so widely that it's really hard to put a definition on what a PM does. But on a broader scope, the PM, if you break down a product design phase or a product building phase into answering questions such as the how, what, when, why, and where, the PM answers the where question, the why, how, and the who. So basically, the engineering team, the software engineer, will have to focus on the how question, on how to build this product in the best possible scalable way, in a most efficient way possible. But the PM will answer every other question on who are we building this for, what are we going to build, which places are we going to launch it at, and how fast are we going to build this product. So essentially, your job as a PM is to do whatever that's necessary in order to answer all these questions and work with your engineering team to ship the best possible product that is also commercially viable. So in a startup, your role as a PM can vary from, doing things like wireframing for the entire web app or whatever mobile app that you're working on. So wireframing, and in terms of wireframing, you could draw a bunch of diagrams. You could also do a full-on wireframe with colors and Photoshop and all that stuff. And you'll be managing scrums. You'll be running scrums along with your dev lead. Scrums, for those of you who haven't heard of it before, is part of the agile development process where you set 2-week sprints, and you basically lay out what you're going to do for the next 2 weeks, assign tasks and track them and cost them accordingly. And you'll be running scrums. You'll be attending meetings with business people, with sales people, with engineering people, so that you get all of the perspectives covered. And afterwards, after product ships, you'll be doing a lot of testing and monitoring and A/B testing in order to make sure that the product is okay. So,
I'm
yeah.
really sorry to disturb, but I'd really like to ask a question.
Yeah, sure.
How would you define the difference between a Scrum Master and your role of a PM?
A Scrum Master and a what?
And the role of PM, the job that you're in.
Yeah, so a Scrum Master theoretically could be anyone. In our team, the way we do it is that we have a rotating Scrum Master so that everyone can have a chance to run the Scrum. And a lot of time, these are engineers who are running the Scrums or the dev lead. The PM, a PM and a Scrum Master could be the same person. Like the Scrum Master could be a rotating role or could be a fixed person. But the PM is really looking at the broader scope of the project. And it's really the PM's role to break down, for a 3-month project, to break down all the tasks within, into 2-week sprints or however long you want that period to be. And during the Scrum, generally my dev lead will run the Scrum. After my dev lead and I at the side, we have listed all the tasks that need to be done for that particular sprint. And then the dev lead, I think his role as more of a Scrum Master is to allocate and go through every single one of the individual developers or software engineers and to make sure that they're on track. There are no dependencies and, recost everything if necessary. So you can think of it as kind of they're not necessarily conflicting roles. A PM is more of a role that is really on the software engineering PM level. A Scrum Master is really within the context of the Scrum, who is going to run that Scrum for that particular day. So it could be a PM. Yeah, if that answers your question.
Thanks for clearing the confusion.
Yep.
Does anyone else have any question regarding what Xu just shared? Any question about any concepts regarding like wireframing or agile software development? Well, if you have any questions, you're definitely feel free to ask them anytime, and we'll try to clarify it for our within our best ability. So we have a list of questions that all the fellows filled out before. So one of them is that, so they're asking, Xu, if you had a programming background before joining undergraduate program, so within high school, did you have a programming background of any kind?
I didn't. So that's the thing. So I came from Singapore. So I went to high school, middle school, elementary school in Singapore. And Singapore has a great education system, but I think we have a lot to catch up on in terms of computer science and engineering. So it provides us with, we're a very science and we're a very science-focused country in terms of our education. So in a way, it does provide you with a good foundation in terms of math and algorithms and physics, chemistry, all that stuff. It provides you with a good grounding for it. But I think unlike Bangladesh or India, it doesn't really provide you with a lot of engineering courses or computer science courses from middle school and high school up. So in that sense, you guys actually do have a very good advantage in having this kind of engineering background. But me personally, I didn't. I started from freshman year of college.
Okay, awesome. And the next question I have from them is, what basic skills should one have to get internship in Google, Microsoft, Quora, Reddit, Facebook? So those are the bigger companies everyone knows about in Bangladesh. And I mean, as a Bangladeshi student, I think you can't ever really see yourself, picture yourself in those companies because, they don't come to Bangladesh to recruit. But if they want to prepare themselves to work in those companies, and what are some of the, skills they need to work on developing?
Okay, is this a software engineering job or a program manager job?
I guess software engineering is, since they're more they're more aware of that aspect.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for software engineering, I can tell you a little more about the interviewing process. So for Google, Microsoft, most of these big companies, they will likely set you up with several loops of interview. And if you pass through the first few loops, it could be a phone screen, it could be a on campus, which is on your school campus screen. If they pass you through all these initial loops, they will fly you down to their campus, where in that one single day, you will meet with potentially 4 or 5 different recruiters or dev leads and potential team members who are going to give you some behavioral questions as well as mostly technical questions. If you're going for the software engineering job, you'll be expected to code either on a piece of paper or on the whiteboard. And at the end of the interview loop, they will match you up with the team. So during your first few rounds of interview, I know for Google, they use Google Docs to make you code on Google Docs. And generally, how to prepare for these kind of coding questions is that you just need to be very solid on your basic algorithms, data structures, basically knowing simple things on how to manipulate linked lists, how to sort your basic sorts, merge sort, bubble sort. Also, runtimes are really important. And apart from the basic data structures, the more complicated algorithms like search algorithms, like trees and like Dijkstra's, basically all these kind of dynamic problem-solving algorithms. And those are kind of around more of the coding side. And then there's also some design element to it, design principles, like what kind of design pattern that you should be using for certain larger projects. So like the MVC model view controller, I don't even remember most of it, but you could read up on a lot of these design patterns, like in the injection model or some dependency model. And you might get some questions on scalability. And depending on the team that you're really working with, if you're going to interview with more of the server side, like Azure or AWS, you might want to brush up a little on your servers knowledge and distributed systems knowledge. But if you're working more on the front end, like web development, you definitely need to know some things about JavaScript, CSS, Bootstrap. So I would say there's some basic category of questions that every single software engineer is going to be expected to know, like data structures and like code design, all that stuff, and good coding habits. And then there's some more of the specific topics you need to know, and that really depends on your team's product, whether it's front end, mobile app, web app, or is it back end servers.
I had another question. If I am targeting a specific title for the job I'm aiming for example, I'm into the front end work, right? So would my interview process still consist of the algorithmic basics, like the hardcore programming questions?
So it really depends on which role your recruiter matches you with. So in the best case
let's say I'm aiming for UX design, right? So would my interviews be initially processed in that genre, or would I have to go through the basic interview process consisting of hardcore programming?
Yeah, so if you're interviewing for a UX designer job, which is a very different role from the software engineering job, then your interview is going to be specifically geared towards the UX designer role, and there will be mostly questions about UX design. But if you're interviewing as a software engineer, there is really no telling to say whether you'll be matched with a team that's like front end or back end. And if you have a good recruiter and also like a good opening within that company, such that it places you on the front end team as a front end engineer specifically, then chances are your interview questions are going to be more geared towards the front end development. But I've seen a lot of friends who love to do front end, but they get put in as a full stack engineer just because there are more full stack engineering positions. And the title is the same, software engineer, but in that case, they need to be a lot more prepared with their algorithm questions because they're interviewing as a full stack.
Exactly. And if we talk about Microsoft specifically, we don't see in our country recruiters coming in. So how would you refer to us about the interviewing process? Like, how do we open up? Like, do we shoot a mail, or like how do we start with the process to
I guess how do they put themselves out there and showcase their work and the fact that
because
just to get
in
some
my
context,
knowledge, recruiters do not often come to our country.
So are you guys college students or are you guys high school?
They're all university students. They're currently university students.
I see. And you're saying that Microsoft, Google, these big tech companies don't recruit in your college?
Yeah, like I think pretty much none of the big companies come to the universities of Bangladesh, right? Like not even in Buet. Yeah.
So Google, yes, Google does. Google holds an APAC contest every year. And the recruitment process is pretty much inside the campus, but I don't get much notice from Microsoft though.
I see. Yeah, so the Microsoft recruiting effort is really very much dependent on HR and the recruiting team. And well, I can't really be like, oh, we'll recruit more in Bangladesh, but one way to really well, the standard way is really to submit your resume through the Microsoft portal. But another way is to really try to get to connect with current employees, and perhaps in your senior year, when you're looking for a full-time job, you could, connect with someone working at Microsoft to try to get them to submit a referral for you, or like schedule an informational or coffee chat with one of the connections within Microsoft and tell them a little more about what you do, your background, and if they think that you're a good fit, you could try to ask them to send in a referral for you so that you could, your resume is for sure going to get into the hands of a recruiter. But that being said, there's also the traditional channel of, uploading a resume onto like the portal. And yeah, the chances there is a little lower, but uh, I guess it's hard if we don't recruit directly from your school. I could definitely kind of talk to our recruiting team and see whether or not they could set something up for like girls in with them in your group or in your recruiting in your college, and see whether or not we have future plans to recruit into colleges. But for now, until we get to those colleges, I'm afraid these are the only two avenues you have to really reach out to Microsoft here.
That's even useful information. I had little idea about the portal itself, so thank you.
Yeah, so if you go to like Microsoft.com, they usually have like a careers page, or if you go to LinkedIn, actually, LinkedIn has the job openings posted on LinkedIn are usually very, very up to date. And if you just apply on LinkedIn or apply via the career portal, then your resume will likely get somewhere. So, yeah. But if you don't hear back, then you could either let me know, or if you know someone else who's working in Microsoft, you could just drop them an email and send me your resume, and we could see what we could do for you.
Awesome. So along those lines, so something that Wisdom really kind of emphasizes is taking ownership of your education, meaning kind of learning a new skill or developing new skill through developing a stream of side projects. Especially like now we know like a lot of the interviewing and within hackathons, a lot of the engineers get noticed for their work through their portfolios. And that's something that's not necessarily like a well-known, like a common knowledge within Bangladesh, I would say, because a lot of the focus is on theoretical understanding within the traditional ECE majors. So if you could tell us a little bit more about like the importance of like having side projects or like open source work as a way to really like develop as an engineer, and B, also like get jobs within those fields.
Yeah, definitely. I do think that a comp-sci education isn't really sufficient, like even at a university level, no matter whether in Bangladesh or in college in the United States. Just doing all your classes is nowhere close to being sufficient to preparing you for a software engineering job in the real world. I think most of the practice you get is really doing side projects on your own, either through hackathons or just building some mobile app or some web app on your own, or just going through like some iOS or Android tutorial and just having fun with it. It's really about all these side projects that make you stand out amongst all your peers who are also going to have a computer science or ECE degree and also have taken the same classes. So when I recruit and I look through resumes and we sort through hundreds of resumes, we generally look for people who have contributed to like open source programming or have done hackathons and have had like a solid project to their name. And sometimes I know recruiters also look through your GitHub account and repo to look through exactly what you've done and whether or not you're actually exaggerating certain projects or how much of a role you've put within a certain project. So I would say definitely give yourself some solid out-of-class practice in like building either web apps or Android apps or iOS apps. And it's really easy to start doing one of those things these days, and you could just get a free server subscription, and it's really easy to get started. So even if you don't have hackathon opportunities or really class project opportunities, just go today and sign up for just set up some backend server and just build a website just describing yourself, like showcasing your class projects, and just start out from there. And then at least that's something to showcase, and in the process learn some JavaScript, CSS, Bootstrap, and it's all worth it in the end if you do it.
Okay, so the other question that we have is, as a program manager, how do you initially brainstorm on a project?
So this really depends a lot on whether you're working in a small company or a big company. In a big company, PMing in a big company is very, very different from what I think you guys would think about traditional PMing, which is like oh, you work with the CEO or CTO or dev lead, and then you are like, oh, what shall we build? Let's wireframe what we're going to build. Let's identify a customer group. So chances are, if you're working as a PM in a big company, all of these questions have been kind of already answered for you from higher up, and you're likely working in a project or product that has like millions and billions of users and billions of revenue already. So the projects that are going to be handed to you are more of a specific nature depending on how senior you are as a PM. So as a junior level PM, you're going to be handed very, very specific projects like, oh, launch this tax in this country, or launch the specific product on this existing store and make sure that everything links up to one another. So it's very different from working as a PM in a startup. So if you're talking about working in a PM in startup, which is, I think, more relevant to your question, generally you sit down with your dev lead and your entire engineering team, and as well as whatever business people that you have, and then you really brainstorm about what the product is going to look like. You identify your target customers. You identify the timeline with which you want to launch this product, and basically list down all the functionalities, features, what's your MVP, minimum viable product, what are the should-haves, what are the must-haves, what are the nice-to-haves, and then you prioritize them accordingly, and then you try to break them out into, say you have 3 months to launch this product, you break them out into the different phases, design phase, like implementation phase, beta phase, alpha phase. So all these kind of design practices you could read up online. The typical, like, from prototype to beta to alpha, beta, and then the final product launch, all these product life cycles. It's really up to the PM to kind of work through all of these timelines and fit in the various features in order of priority within these timelines. So it really varies. So it's really not a question that I have a cookie cutter answer for, because it really varies so much on what you're working on and the scope of it, and whether you're working in a big company or small company. But in general, it's usually fairly like commonsensical what you need to work on. I mean, do you have a more specific like big company versus small company question for me, or?
Does anyone have a more specific question along those lines? I think like the idea of program management is a little new for most people, if I'm not wrong. So
Yeah.
like I think the more they learn about it, I guess you can kind of like tell us more about like some of the characteristics that are needed as a program manager, like soft skills or hard skills, other than like, let's say, a solid understanding of the technicalities.
Yeah, so I think to be a good program manager, you need to be able to talk to various people with many different backgrounds. So you need to be able to speak the lingo of pure business people, pure marketing, or pure legal people. And at the same time, being able to talk to engineers. And even though all of them are, English speaking and everything, you'll be surprised at how differently they talk and communicate their goals and objectives and what they want to get done. Because in general, the salespeople, the marketing people, business people don't really care that much about what needs to be done within the system. They're more interested in the output and the consequences and the market reach and everything. Whereas the engineering people, sometimes you can find that they are a little more, I would say, they care a little less about the business outcome as opposed to the engineering brilliance or what needs to be done on an engineering level. So bridging that gap is kind of like the biggest challenge you'll face on a day-to-day, like PM level, in a PM level role. So in a small company, you'll be the bridge between more of the CEO and the engineering team. And very often your CEO is more of a business guy. He will want like 10,000 features to be shipped out within like 2 days, and he wants to reach out to like 5 million different customers. But from an engineering standpoint, that is not feasible. So as a PM, it's really your role to bridge that gap and manage the expectations of the CEO while, giving the engineering team like enough kind of maximizing their output and efficiency such that they can build the best possible product within a certain amount of time and restraints. In a big company, your role will be more of talking to like 10 different teams who are working on related products that are going to have a dependency on you, but it's not really directly within your team. And you'll be representing more of your team in communications with all these other teams. And so communication skills across like a wide range of people is very, very important. Conflict management and timeline management is also very important because a lot of times you have conflicting agenda, conflicting interests, conflicting opinions, and bringing these kind of like differences together such that they don't impact or hinder the final progress of the product is very, very important. Also having a technical background is also very important because a lot of time your challenge is really getting credibility with your engineering team. So a lot of PMs kind of over the span of 10, 15 years lose a little bit of their technical like abilities because they just haven't coded for so long. And so in order to really communicate and gain the trust and credit and respect of your fellow engineering, either dev leads or devs, you need to kind of stay up to date with your technical background, coding skills, so that they feel like they're on the same page as you. They trust that you understand their challenges and where they're coming from, and they trust you to represent them in front of other kind of stakeholders. And I think those three are more of the key characteristics or key kind of skills that a PM needs to have: communication skills, technical background, and really people like EQ, like social skills and managing, different expectations and conflicts. So,
based on the experiences you just shared, I just had a scenario in mind. So, let's say the engineering team is working on a deadline that is pretty strict, but it's just not working out. And let's say the deadline is tomorrow and they're just coming out to you and saying that it's just not working out. Like, I need some more time. And on the other side, the sales and marketing team may be putting a pressure on you, like, why isn't it ready? It's supposed to be done by tomorrow. Like, so how do you manage that situation?
mm-hmm. So one of the most important things we need to remember as PMs is really never to let things get to the kind of a next day situation where you had a deadline and you couldn't meet it, and the deadline is tomorrow, because chances are you're supposed to know of this, that your dev team is slipping or deadlines are slipping at least a couple of weeks ahead or at least a week ahead, so that you could communicate these kind of slips and manage and reshuffle timelines and dependencies with at least a week or 2 weeks of grace period, and communicate these ahead. So one way of making sure that all your different stakeholders are all aligned and have a realistic expectation of the real deadline is to really send out daily or bi-weekly updates to all the stakeholders. Have an Excel sheet or have a table with all the different tasks and the deadlines and progress and status, whether or not it's red, green, or yellow, and make sure that everyone is on the same page, so that when really things go down, no one should really be surprised, right? If you're surprising people at the very last minute saying, oh, tomorrow we're not going to be able to ship, and I'm only going to tell you the day ahead, then you're not really doing your job.
Nightmare for someone like you in that position. So
yeah,
engineering teams do go through ups and downs, like
they do go through ups and
happen.
downs. But you're supposed to factor in the entire 2 weeks or the sprint's worth of workload ahead of hand.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we have daily scrums. So every single day, we should be able to know what is going to get done and what's realistically not going to get done. So the only scenario where someone is going to tell you that, hey, yesterday I promised you that it's going to get done today, but today I'm telling you that it's not going to get done today. That should really be a rare case. But in the case that happens, you really need to do the damage control at that point. You need to get the word out to all parties or all stakeholders who are going to be impacted as soon as you know of it. And from then on, set up some meeting or face-to-face time with them and go through what exactly you could do to do damage control, and what are the things you could push out, what are the things you can't push out, and really have your engineering team be looped in as part of the meeting so that they could kind of give you a more realistic deadline of when they could get this work done. But the whole role of a PM is to really prevent these kind of things from happening in the first place. Yeah. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but
Thank you.
But can I just what happens if, like, since you're the program manager and your engineers have not like they haven't delivered the message to you that they won't be able to deliver the project? What happens if a situation like that?
Yeah, so really as a program manager, your role isn't really to sit around and wait for engineering teams to deliver their status to you. Your role is to go up to the engineers and chase them down and hound them until they give you a solid deadline that they can meet. So back to the previous answer, you shouldn't be letting that happen, because the key role of a PM is to be proactive and reaching out and getting solid deadlines on a very updated basis. But if in the case where the engineer gave you false information, where he told you that I'll get this done today, but the next day maybe he's sick or something and he just couldn't get it done, yeah, that kind of thing might happen. In that case, all you can do is really damage control. And damage control, depending on what kind of project you're shipping and what kind of product you're shipping, you could either bring in more devs on board if you know ahead of hand that he's not going to finish it, bring in one or more two devs to take over his role, or you could, you have to work with the external teams and just tell them that your deadline has slipped and ask them what are the consequences, and you try to mitigate whatever consequences there is. There's really no other choice at that point. But really, I cannot emphasize this further, that as a PM, your role is really to make sure that that doesn't happen. And it's really your responsibility to go up to the devs and ask them on their progress, instead of them telling you last minute that they've slipped. You should have known exactly when they're going to slip and why they're going to slip.
Okay.
That's pretty much the nightmare that you try to.
That sounds like a
Stay away
huge
from.
responsibility.
Yeah, it's a huge responsibility, because when things don't ship, as a PM, because you're customer facing, you're really going to be bearing a lot of responsibility, because realistically, the engineers don't have a lot of visibility into the business requirements, because it's not really an efficient use of their time to be spending hours and hours in meetings with all these different stakeholders. Their time is best used when they're in their office coding. And so it's really your responsibility to be able to communicate all these deadlines and requirements and restraints to your engineering, and also vice versa to the business people. So if deadlines are slipping and things are broken and you don't have a plan B for everything, it's really the PM who should be bearing the responsibility, because you're the managing one.
Thank you so much, Shri, for answering that question in such detail. So the next question we have goes back to the whole, how do you showcase your skills the best? And so the question we have is, essentially it says, so portfolios are important, but how important are our CGPAs? If we have a solid portfolio, but our CGPA ranges from 3.3 to 3.5 out of 4, is that a deal breaker to get accepted in a company like Microsoft?
It really depends on the company. I know certain companies are more GPA driven, and also certain managers are more GPA driven. So I can't give you a solid answer on whether or not your GPA is really consequential. I would say that from my personal experience, when I look through a resume, the GPA is generally not the first thing I look at. I look at the courses that you've taken. I look at the projects that you've done. I generally try to figure out your reputation within your peers, if I could get a hold of that. And if you have solid programming experience, I really don't really care if your GPA is a 3.5 or a 3.4 or whatever. If your projects are all solid and you're a solid programmer who can pass all my algorithm interviews. But that being said, there is an advantage. Like if I look at a kid who has a 4.0 on an ECE comp sci double major in courses that I know are very challenging, that speaks well to me on their intelligence. That, okay, they're probably a super genius in that respect. I have seen people who get 4.0 and just fail to code. I know a friend who actually had a 4.0 GPA ECE and came to Microsoft as an intern, didn't get a return offer because he's just not a good coder. I've definitely seen that. But In general, for me personally, GPA doesn't matter as much. I know friends who have a 3.1 GPA and have gotten a software engineering job, and they're in the exact same position, exact same level, everything as someone who has gotten a 3.8, 3.9. I don't think your GPA really, really matters to American universities as well as American recruiters, because generally we have a liberal arts system. And if you're a software engineer, we're not expecting you to get straight A's for drawing classes, for humanities classes. So um, if you have, if you're not really a jack of all trades and you have a good, solid computer science GPA, but your overall GPA is really, really low, I would say filter out that computer classes and put in a major, like CS major GPA or EC major GPA, like 3.9, whereas like your overall GPA is a 3.1 just because you flunked all your econ classes or something. But yeah, you could do that. But in general, if you have like anything above, I think a 3.3, 3.5, I think you're solid. I wouldn't worry too much about it.
Okay, awesome. So the next question we have, it kind of goes back to like how you're describing the qualities of a great PM. So just to kind of like drive the point home, like someone is asking, like in the skills that you need to develop for like a good role within the tech industry, other than the tech skills, like how much like I guess leadership and communication skills matters, and like so that's the question we have, and I guess the best ways for them to kind of really harbor those.
Mm-hmm. So these kind of questions are really hard for me to answer in the
Yeah.
context of if I don't know the context of whether you're talking about like a small startup or whether you're talking about a big company, because from my experience, there is a huge, huge difference being a PM in a small company or a startup versus being a PM in a big company. So
I think they would be interested to hear about your experience, which is like working in Microsoft, which is a big company. Yeah.
okay, so from
Yeah.
a big company point of view, I think the core skills of a big company, of a PM in a big company is very different. And I think primarily, especially as an entry-level PM, leadership skills really isn't about what you traditionally think about, which is like rallying people and telling people what to do. That's not really leadership skills that's relevant as an entry-level PM. I think what is more important as an entry-level PM is really taking initiative, and that's the kind of leadership angle that I would recommend. Basically taking initiative in asking questions, in talking to various stakeholders, in planning, sending out weekly updates, really talking to engineers and exploring the system. So as a PM, no one's going to handhold you and tell you what to do. So whether or not you're going to succeed or fail as a junior level PM, it's really whether or not you take the onus on yourself to go and explore and find out things that no one is going to tell you about. And after you do all these, collate as much information as possible, understand the system as best as you could possible, you can think about the angle that you could best contribute to. And if you're really interested in a feature, or if no one in your team is interested in data analysis, but you think that the team really needs some data analysis, just go in, get your hands dirty, and do some data analysis and ship out this data analysis to your higher ups. And basically think of contributing in ways that you think you can best contribute. Because realistically, if I'm being perfectly honest, what a junior PM does is very different from what a senior PM does in a big company. And in Microsoft, for instance, there are a lot of levels of management, and decisions tend to flow top down. So you're not going to get a lot of kind of influence right off the bat when you first enter a company and go up. You're not going to go up to a product team that have been working on a product for like 10, 20 years and be like, I want you to build this feature, that feature, and that feature, because no one's going to listen to you because you don't know anything about the system. You don't know what the costs are to building any of your feature ideas, right? But if you could back your recommendations with data, with market research, with good understanding of the system, then you might be able to get someone to pay attention to what you're saying and adopt your ideas. So really, I think the most important skill, most important characteristic of a junior level PM is really to have initiative and be proactive, and really to have do not let little setbacks kind of get you down, because a lot of time, other people may be busy. They may not give you as much attention as you're used to getting in your university days. So you really have to just stay strong and, take it on yourself to find out more, learn more, and be patient, really be patient, because in college, when you want to build something, you just go in and build it, right? In a big company, if you want to build it, you need to understand a lot more and understand the system that's been running for decades even, before you can even understand a small bit of this larger product. So be patient and be proactive.
Thanks, Xu. That was very, very helpful. Does anyone else have any question? This is an incredible opportunity for all of you to ask any question you may have about working about Microsoft and how to prepare for those roles. So I really, really suggest you to take this opportunity. So we have heard from Zina, we have heard from Anika. Is there anyone else who has a question? If you don't want to say directly, you can definitely use our Google Docs to post the questions there. And I think I've gone through almost, I guess, most of the questions we got on the Google Doc. Does anyone else have any question to add? I guess then we are almost ready to wrap up our Google Hangout session. I guess before we part, do you have any general advice for let's say for people where they don't have the traditional recruiting channels available to them, how do they best, I guess, get the motivation to just continuing developing their skills and I guess hone their skills, and how important that is? To just kind of elaborate on that. And I guess in general, the way the tech industry has really been developing and evolving with time, how that requires them to kind of take ownership of their skills and their education. If you could just kind of hone that a little, or speak about that a little bit, Xu, that would be helpful.
Mm-hmm. I would say that the tech industry is moving very, very fast in terms of evolving technologies, different frameworks, and different tools that they use every single month, every single year. That's something new that isn't going to be taught in your classroom. And I would say always keep up to date with these kind of technologies, explore these frameworks on your own. Being a software engineer and being a PM is really about taking the initiative to go learn a lot of things on your own, apart from, and not just waiting for knowledge and skills and assignments to be given to you, because really technology is about exploring and creating and innovating. And if you're going to be more in the passive side and waiting for people to tell you what to do, that really defeats the whole purpose of being in the tech field. So definitely take a lot of initiative and time to do things outside of your classwork. Just start small. Don't be too ambitious right off the bat. Just start out really small. Do a small project. I think a web application for introducing yourself, and maybe even setting up a blog. Not using WordPress or Blogspot, but building something.
Yeah. Wrapping up, but I had one small question.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
As soon as I heard you talking, I just had it in my mind about how do we keep ourselves updated with this fast-moving, ways of coding and using several frameworks, because the framework models are changing constantly. One day it's JavaScript, and then the next day it's Node.js and React.js, and I don't know, so many other stuffs coming up. How do you cope up? How would you advise us to cope up with this change?
Yeah, so there's always going to be a trade-off between depth and breadth, right? So I would say definitely be aware, at the very least, aware of the different frameworks and technologies, so that when people talk about it, you know what they're saying, you know what these frameworks are capable of, whether it's front end, back end, or full stack. And in order to do that, you could keep up with the various news channels. I think TechCrunch has got Quora is actually one of my favorite medium, because they have a lot of experts, CEOs of tech companies, great software engineers, who are forever answering questions about these kind of things. Just Google what is the latest technology framework, and you'll see a lot of very good answers on Quora. And whatever keyword or framework that you pick up from there, if you're interested, you're like, oh, this sounds interesting, go ahead and Google more about it. And Google is really your best friend when it comes to this. Like tech is all about, it's really a lot about Googling and
Oh,
finding out more about all these technologies that you're interested in. I wouldn't invest too much time into going deep into all of them. Just go with your interests and make sure that you understand and know a wide range of things, but you don't really need to dig really deep into all of them until you're sure that you're interested in this or you want to use this framework for a certain project.
I tend to do that, dig deeper, which is why I suffer all the time. So
Yeah,
that's
so
good advice.
so just maybe build up a habit of spending the first half an hour every hour of your day, over coffee or breakfast. Just do a quick news read. Go to Quora, TechCrunch, or just anything, Google, and just read up on the news. What new companies there are out there? What new technologies there are out there? What's trending? What's the latest topic of discussion? Is it going to be Ruby on Rails versus React versus Meteor? Like, what are all these different debates going on? And just read up more on it. You don't really need to. I'm not asking you to go in and like do some Code Academy tutorials on it because you can't really. You don't have time to do all of that.
Exactly.
Yeah. And also, I think one thing that's also very helpful for me is to really keep a notebook of all your ideas. So whenever you read this kind of things, I think I very often at least have various ideas that pop up to my mind. It's like, oh, what if we have, a system or a business that matches this with that? What if we can have a technology that's capable of, doing this and that? And just jot down all these random ideas in a notebook. Chances are none of them are going to materialize, but it's a very good thought exercise that you're going to have. And for each one of these ideas, really brainstorm on how you visualize it getting implemented, who's your target customer, and what features are going to have, what the risks and challenges, what's going to make it fail, what's going to make it succeed. And these are just really, in general, good thought exercises to have. And it will really benefit you in future PM interviews, or really, if you're interested in entrepreneurship in the future, it's a great thing to have, a good habit to have.
Thank you.
Do we have any more questions, or?
Not anymore from me.
Is Stefana, are you there?
Oh yeah, sorry, I'm still here. I think the mute option was on. No, I was just saying, does anyone have any more questions? And if not, I guess we are ready to wrap up. Thank you so much, Xu, for giving us the time. It was an incredible opportunity for all of us to learn so much about like Microsoft directly from you, and then like learning about your experiences and just the perspectives you share from like software engineering to all the various roles. Yeah, and I guess does anyone have any else kind of parting thoughts to share? And if you have anything else, like just any advice or anything to share to anyone, we would really appreciate it. But once again, we really, really, really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Yep, thanks for being here, everyone. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. I will leave Stefana my email, and yeah, if you have any questions, just leave me an email and I'll get back to you.
Thank you for the valuable advice and your time. Thank you.
Yeah, there was a very big learning experience. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yep,
it was very
thanks for being
insightful.
here.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Xu.
Thank
Bye.
you. Have a great weekend. Bye.
Bye.